that report was never actually officially presented to the inquiry, although the family said it was. It never was in the end of the day. So they made the case basically that the pilot, the co-pilot, was suffering from fume inhalation. There had been some episodes in earlier flights, the history of this particular aircraft type, that the engine fumes were mixing into the cockpit, and a couple of pilots did actually pass out. But in this particular case, we are quite certain that didn't happen, because he actually rehearsed his suicide procedure on the previous leg of the flight. Because basically when the pilot went out during that particular leg, he went through the motions of altering the autopilot and setting it to 100 degrees, 100 feet, sorry. So then when the pilot came back, he'd put it back to normal again. So he knew what he was going to do, and that came out much later when they actually went into the various black boxes. So we know this was a premeditated action, shall we say. And then the rest of his medical history came out, and frankly, he shouldn't have been flying anyway. So that's what I got from that. So I think we can safely park the family's report, because it's interesting theory. There were several procedural episodes that didn't happen, that shouldn't have happened. But remember, with these investigations, it's really to establish what was wrong with the aircraft, what's wrong with the systems, and it's a safety review. Because if the aircraft's not functioning properly, then obviously everybody has to know very quickly why it's not functioning properly. Then later on, as part of it, then you look at the people who are flying it. And this comes when you actually get the black box recordings, because you get the voice recordings, you get the conversations between the pilot and the first officer. So, and you can also gauge from that whether there's tension in the cockpit or whether it's all going quite happily. And of course, when they actually played it all back, they could hear everything that was going on. So I think we can, well, I'm quite certain in my own mind it was pilot suicide. The tracking information was very, very clear, because it was the air traffic control that first alerted the plane, or tried to get in touch with the pilot, say, listen, you are heading for this mountain. Your altitude is set at 100 feet. And of course, the pilot, which was the first officer, wasn't actually responding. He closed down his communications. And so they are already aware that something was very, very wrong. And they even had time to scramble a French jet to go up and try and intercept the plane. But unfortunately, that didn't get there in time, and it was too late for that. So I think we can safely say that they were onto it, and they were already, if you like, assembling the troops, assembling the experts and everybody else, because they knew that this was going to happen. It was so clear. Unfortunately, the passengers at that point didn't know, and very quickly they did realize it's going to happen when the pilots, when the captain started hitting the cockpit door with an axe. Now, after 9/11, the specifications for doors were changed. And basically what happened was that there was no way you could get into the cockpit from the cabin unless you knew the code for the keypad, or whoever's in charge of the plane had a switch. So that switch could go off and on. That switch could also override the keypad. And what had happened, of course, he'd actually flicked the door switch, so the code didn't work. And there was no way that the captain could get back in. He just left really for a comfort break. But Andreas knew that he would be going for a comfort break, because that's what he always did halfway through. and
Yeah.
handed it over to him. And so the whole script was set, if you like. But my understanding is he programmed it so nobody was actually alerted that it was actually in a dive. It was going down gradually. Later on, it went down a lot faster, but he didn't want to alarm because everybody sort of suddenly, it's like going down in a lift. So first of all, it was taken down gradually, but then when you knew the game was up, then of course you just set it at 100 feet, then it went into the side of the mountain. And he also increased the speed quite substantially. So it really was a pile driver into the side of the mountain. And when the rescue teams arrived, they realized there's nothing here to rescue. This is now a recovery operation because the plane was basically shredded. The largest piece of debris they got was about the size of a small truck, and that had about four windows on it. It was part of the fuselage. The rest was mashed to pieces. So obviously everybody died, and it would have been very quick.